It smells meaty. Hey everybody, it's Melissa, and today I am going to show you how to make a delicious meatloaf. Now, this is my Grandma Alice's recipe. It has been in my recipe box for a very long time. I wanted to break it out today and make it. Let's get started on this delicious meatloaf. So the first thing that we're gonna do is take 1 tablespoon of shortening and saute that with 1/3 cup of chopped onion. Just kidding, we're not gonna do that. That's what we would do if we were making the recipe properly, but my husband doesn't like onions and I don't have any on hand, so we're gonna skip that part. Let's get into the meat. Okay, this recipe calls for 1 pound of ground beef and 1/2 pound of ground pork sausage. Now, this is more than 1/2 pound, so I need to weigh this out. I have my kitchen scale here, and I am going to turn that on, and then I'm going to tear or zero out the scale. Right now, this is sitting at about 1 pound, 7.5 ounces. So I'm gonna open this up and put in 1/2 pound. So I'm just gonna squeeze it in the middle and then start to twist it out. Okay, we are at just over 10 ounces, so I'm gonna call that good. Now, this is 1 pound, so I'm gonna put this entire thing in my bowl. Next up, we need 1.5 cups of breadcrumbs. There's 1/2, 1.5. We need 2 beaten eggs. One teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, and 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. Now, it does not specify light versus dark. However, I am going to use dark today. Okay, now for the fun part. Oh, it's cold. Yes. You gotta really get in there. When two become one. Lovely pile of meat. All up in those fingernails. Look at that. Yeah. Now that's a meatball. FYI, this also makes fantastic meatballs. You could definitely, at this point, turn these into meatballs. Go ahead and fry them up in a frying pan and then let them simmer in your favorite sauce. But today is about meat pile, aka meatloaf, so we will be dropping this into a loaf pan. And at this point, you just want to shape around the perimeter of the loaf. Yeah, I don't know if there's rhyme or reason to it, but in my mind, I'm kind of thinking that as the meat cooks and that fat starts to render out and come up to the surface, if I have these little wells here, it will kind of cascade off the sides of the loaf instead of sit right on top. Try and get it as even as possible. Now at this point, your loaf is ready to go in the oven. Put it in a preheated oven to 350 degrees and bake until the internal temperature reaches 160 degrees. An optional step is to halfway through the baking, place a fine layer of pancetta on the top. Makes it extra crispy and extra yummy. If you don't want to bake it right now, you can definitely freeze it at this point. I would recommend freezing it in some disposable containers. That way you don't risk your container breaking or cracking depending on what it's made of. And the next time you want to use your loaf pan, it's not sitting in the freezer waiting to go in the oven. I am going to slip this into the fridge with a saran wrap cover until I'm ready to bake it later on tonight for dinner. All right, it's time to put our meatloaf into our oven. So we're gonna set the timer for about 60 minutes, but remember, you're looking for an internal temperature of 160 degrees. All right, we have reached maximum degreenness with our food item, so time to pull it out. So as you might be able to tell, our loaf has shrunk, which is absolutely to be expected, but I love how it pretty much pulled away from the side of the pan. Now I'm gonna let that rest for just a little bit before I cut into it. And that's it for my meatloaf recipe. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give the video a big thumbs up, hit that subscribe button so you can be notified of future videos, and leave me a comment. Let me know, what is your favorite meatloaf recipe, and what side dish do you like best with it? I'll probably be pairing this with some mashed potatoes and some steamed broccoli. I can't wait for dinner. Have a great one, guys. But remember, you want... All right, so it's been a... And thank you, fridge, for going on right at the moment that I was about to speak to the camera.